Hello all, live with Dr. Mom, moving forward series. This one is Women of the Bible. I haven't been doing it regular, but this week I'm going to try to make Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So hopefully I get it done, because then I'm going to be traveling again. So welcome everyone. I am a doctor of higher education. I am a mom and grandma and good friend, widow. I'm doing this series. Hey, Emily. I'm doing this series on my this is my Moving Forward series. I've done several. So I did a bodybuilding competition. I'm moving forward in my RV life. But today I'm doing Women of the Bible. What I did is I started this series before I left. Hey, Emily, nice to see you on here. If you want to be part of it, I think I can bring you on camera if you'd like to be in the discussion today. I'm just doing a Bible study on the 52 women of the Bible. Today we're talking about Elizabeth. I think it's going to be interesting. You can, if you don't want to be live on camera, you can also type in any comments you have or questions. So what I plan to do today, because I haven't done this in a while, I'm going to go back over. So we are at number 36, Elizabeth, and we're going into the New Testament. So we're in Luke right now. So what I'm going to do is I want to go back to the beginning of one. Oh no, okay. Well, if you have any comments, I would love to hear them too. My bangs are getting long, so they're just kind of hanging out. Anyway, okay, so correct me if I say something wrong, but I'm just kind of gathering the information from this Bible study that I picked up from Jean E. Seswarda, Women of the Bible, 52 studies. So I'm going to make an attempt to go back over all the 1 through 35 just to kind of catch us up, because I haven't been doing it regularly, so I'm going to start with Eve as the first one and then kind of just go back through to remind us where we're going. So one thing I did notice about her Bible study, which I've really found interesting, is that she has followed women that have something to do with the lineage of Christ. And so each time we're kind of brought back and reminded of how important God felt that was to keep the lineage pure in a certain family bloodline. So anyway, I'm just going to go back over it again quickly, and then what I want to do then is introduce the book of Luke. So I kind of looked up some information on Luke, what he's doing, what his book, what he talks about, and then sort of the story of Elizabeth. And she was the mother of John the Baptist, and she was also related to Mary, Jesus's mother. So that's kind of what we're doing today. I'm just going to kind of follow along in a certain path, and then just get through it, and then I'm going to post it on Facebook as well. So I'm starting out with number one. Number one was Eve. So Adam and Eve, we're all pretty familiar with Adam and Eve. I will tell you her name means life-giving, or mother of all who have life. So as we know, she was in the beginning, her and Adam, correctly? In Genesis, correct, sorry. So I'm not going to go over it too much. I'm just going to briefly touch on it. So we know she was the mother of us all, right? We know about the apple and all those things. So let's keep going. Next is Sarah. Sarah was married to Abraham. Her name means chieftainess or princess. And I'm just going to recall a little bit of that. So we remember she was rather old before she became pregnant. They tried and tried and tried, couldn't get pregnant. I believe she was around 100, her and Adam both, and she became pregnant remember, she laughed because she's like, how is that possible? And, God didn't like that too much, but later on, she realized she was pregnant. She believed, and there's a little bit, because we need to go back a little bit. Before she got pregnant, because she didn't believe that God was going to allow her to be pregnant, she gave her handmaiden, and that's Hagar, that's the next one, to Adam to have children. And that, see, sometimes when we don't trust what God is telling us, we do the wrong thing. And that ended up kind of being a mess for them, right? And probably for Hagar and her son. So Hagar is the next one. Hagar was the handmaiden of Sarah. So her name is Egyptian and may mean fugitive or immigrant. Because after she had the baby, well, I think I had written or read somewhere that she became a little haughty, sort of held it over Sarah. It couldn't have been easy for anyone. So she had Adam ban Hagar from the group of people they were in. They ended up, her and the son, Abraham's son, ended up in the desert and were afraid for their life. God came in, saved them, and made them a nation, a certain nation. So that's Hagar. And then we go into, then we go into Lot's wife. So, hey Blanca, nice to see you on here. I told Emily's been watching too. If you want to be on here, you just have to tell me. I can invite you on. You can share the screen. If you have any comments or anything, if you want to be part of it, of the discussion, we're doing a study on Elizabeth, mother of John the Baptist today. I'm going over the other women that we covered this far and just catching us all up on it. So, nice to have you here. We're talking about Lot's wife. So what I've noticed as the study has went through is there's some women that we never really know their names. I don't know why, not sure, but it's just her name's Lot's wife. So Lot, and Lot was part of the story today too, because I'll go into that more. But remember, Lot lived in this Sodom or Gomorrah. Let's see. Sorry. Let me see. This is Genesis and Luke. Let's see. I'm trying to. The Lord rained down sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay. So Lot lived in, and his wife and two daughters, I believe they had two daughters, lived in Sodom and Gomorrah, and it was a pretty evil city. So, hey Vicky, nice to see you on here as well. So the Lord sent in angels to tell Lot that the city was going to be burned, that him and his wife and children should leave the city and not look back. And Lot's wife looked back, was turned to a pillar of salt, I believe is what it is. So that's Lot's wife. Then we get to Rebecca, and it says her name probably means loop or tie. So let's see if I can remember. Oh goodness. Okay. I believe this is where Abraham, trying to remember, it's been a while, wanted his son to marry a woman of his lineage, or his people, I should say. So he sent a servant over, and I believe this is Rebecca, who came out, and she had a jug of water, let's see, with her jar on her shoulder. So in other words, okay, so it was Isaac. Okay, so they knew it was from God, and so Rebecca ended up marrying Abraham's son. Okay, so then we go into Rachel, and her name means, I think it's ew. Let's see. Now Rachel was, I think it's Rachel and Leah that we talk about in this part. Geez, it's been a while, you guys. It's been a while since I've done this. Okay, so Rachel and Leah, remember they were the daughters of Laban. And so Laban, Jacob went to work for Laban because he wanted to marry Rachel. It was two daughters. Rachel was the younger daughter. Leah was the older daughter. He wanted to marry them, and so he promised Laban. Laban kind of tricked him, 7 years of work. He tricked him and brought Leah in instead of Rachel on the wedding night. When Jacob found out, of course he was angry, but then Laban said, well, if you'll work another 7 years, you can have Rachel. So it ended up that actually Rachel actually died in childbirth, had two kids. She was barren for quite a long time, which is our story today as well. With Elizabeth was older when she was pregnant with John, but we see that quite a bit. God's blessings on women that have been without children for many years. So Leah ended up having many more children. Rachel died early on after Benjamin was born. And Leah went on to stay married to Jacob for many years and have a lot of sons. I'm thinking 13 or so. Okay, so then we go to Tamar, daughter-in-law of Judah. Okay, Tamar, if I remember right, so was Judah's son, and Tamar married him. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Judah mixed into a race, and I don't know if it was a Canaanite race, but there was a race that God didn't want them to interrelate with. They did, and both of his sons died at a young age. Now, Tamar was married to one of the sons, then ended up marrying the second son when the first one died, and he died. She was still without children, so she ended up tricking her father-in-law, Judah, later on, because he kind of liked the prostitutes. And so she dressed as one, tricked him, got pregnant from him. So that was Tamar. Potiphar's wife. Here's another one. This is 9. Potiphar's wife was another one. Sorry, guys. Hopefully we'll stay live. I think I went out just a little bit, but I better hurry. Potiphar's wife was Joseph, remember, coat of many colors, was sold into slavery, went to the Pharaoh's mansion, Egyptians, and became pretty popular. And by Potiphar was the ruler, and his wife wanted Joseph. Long story short, he had to run out, and I believe was arrested because she said he did things to her. She was actually after Joseph because he was very handsome. Oh goodness, the mothers of Moses. So remember, Moses had 2 moms. This is in a time when Pharaoh went through the land and was killing the first male-born children, remember? They put blood on the doors. His 2 mothers were, Jochebed was his birth mother, and then the Pharaoh's daughter raised him. Because Joseph was put in the river Nile, I believe, in a basket and found. And then the next one's about Miriam. Miriam's a sister of Moses, remember? Miriam helped find, she watched the basket until Moses was found. And then she talked the Pharaoh's daughter into letting her own mother be his nursemaid and help raise him until he was a little older. So that's the 2 moms. That's Miriam. Rahab. Let's see, Rahab. I'm trying to get this down. Rahab was both clever and wise. She saw judgment coming. Oh, Rahab. Okay. Rahab, actually, her name means storm, arrogance, broad, or spacious. Okay. Let's see. I think, if I'm not mistaken, she lived out on the walls of the city. as was a prostitute. But she loved God. And so she ended up saving 2 spies that were sent from Joshua to go in over the land. And she knew that they were going to be killed, and she helped save them. So she knew that they were God's men and helped save them. This comes to one of my favorites, Deborah. I really, really like Deborah. And her name means honeybee. So Deborah was a powerful woman. She was a judge. And in those days, she was a prophetess. She also was a warrior. So she actually went in and saved the people, the Egyptian people, from being in slavery. So she had someone, let me see, I'm trying to think who it was. So let's see. So she had someone who was head of her army, and she said, if you'll go in and do what I say, you can win and free people from slavery. And he didn't believe her, so she said, okay, fine. It's going to be known that a woman freed the people from 40 years of slavery. Okay, so that was Deborah. I like her. I like her. So Jael is another one I like. She was ferocious too. Oh gosh, well, I can't think of right now. Anyway, I was talking to somebody the other day about this, about how we were talking about the video that I made, and gosh, why can't I think? Anyway, about how women in the, well, a lot of the stories have women where they're married off, right? And oh, we were talking about Solomon and how his wife, Song of Songs, how his wife didn't have a choice in her servitude. And Solomon, I don't know if you heard it, but he had like 300 wives, I think, or something. He kind of went overboard. And how hard that must have been. But, you know, women like Deborah were powerful women in those days. Jael was another one. So she was her name means a wild or mountain goat. So she was courageous as well. So when Deborah went in and killed the armies, the main guy, I think his name was Sisera, and he fled. So he's the only one that survived her army, and he fled on foot, ran into the tent of Jael to try and get to be saved, right? Well, Jael knew what was going on. She actually put him to sleep, served him milk or something, put him to sleep, and drove a pent stake through his head when he was sleeping. Can't tell me these weren't ferocious women, right? Okay, Delilah. You guys probably know the harlot. Delilah was a harlot. So Samson and Delilah, remember Samson had the long hair, gave him power. Delilah ended up, I don't know, like she married him, but she must not have liked him very well. She told others about the Philistines wanted to, because he always defeated him, Samson did, and they were trying to get her to take away his power. Well, she found out that his hair was his power, and she cut it. That was Delilah. Naomi means joy and pleasant. Let's see. So Naomi. I think I'm remembering Naomi. That's right. So Naomi and Ruth are tied together. So Naomi had 2 sons, and Ruth was married to one of them. Both her sons were killed, and Ruth, remember, stayed with her. She was her daughter-in-law, and she stayed with Naomi even though her husband had died. And Naomi had freed her to go back to her home, her own people. But Ruth stayed with Naomi because, for whatever reason, like she was loyal or she loved her more than her people. But later on, they moved back to Naomi's homeland, and Naomi Ruth was working in a field, and Naomi, I think she kind of had influence, and a very wealthy man in the community ended up marrying Ruth, which is next. Ruth means friendship. Boaz. So Boaz saw Ruth working in a field. Long story short, fell in love with her, took her to marry her in all the proper ways, and took care of Naomi as well. So that was a fun story, wasn't it? Hannah means gracious or favor. Let's see. Hannah's our next one. Hannah. Let's see. I don't remember. This seems like it's another one. So her name means gracious or favor. She was provoked by another woman's malice. She refused to respond in kind. Instead, she poured out her hurt and sorrow to God, allowing him to vindicate her. So Hannah was barren as well in this. So she wept, but stayed true to God, and he ended up rewarding her with a child. So Michal means who is like God. Goodness. So Michal was Saul's daughter and was in love with David. Okay, King David. So a woman of strong emotion. She was unable to control the important circumstance of her life. Forcibly separated from two husbands, she lost her father, brother, who were savage from their enemies. So I believe David, if I'm not, Michal, David's wife, warned, if you don't run for your life. So I think David ended up saving her is what it was. So she was a wife of David, King David. Abigail means my father is joy. This is number 20. I'm hurrying, guys. Hey, Marlene. I haven't seen you in so long. Nice to have you on, friend. Nice to have everybody on here. And I was like, if you guys want to be on here and discuss it, or you have questions, or you want to comment, just go ahead and put it in the comments. I'm trying to get back through. I won't do this every time, but I want to get through. This is the lineage, the women we've covered. I'm on number 20, the lineage of Christ. And so I'm walking up to Elizabeth, right? And so Abigail, generous, quick-witted, and wise. She's one of the Bible's greatest peacemakers. A certain man was very wealthy. His name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. She was intelligent and beautiful. I'm trying to remember who she was. So this was during King David's reign. Been so busy getting, oh yeah, Marlene says she's been getting house ready to sell and have moved down with mom. Oh, okay. Well, that's sweet. That's sweet. Okay, so it looks like Abigail actually, okay, that's right, I'm sorry. She was married before David met her. Her husband ended up dying, and then she actually married King David. So that was Abigail. And she was true to her own husband. Like, she was true to her husband until her husband died, and then she married King David. That'd be hard, you guys. I mean, how hard would it be to resist a king, right? King David was a pretty ferocious king as well. The Women of Endor. This had to do with Saul. Well, let's see. The Woman of Endor. This is another one where we don't know their name. We just know that they were part of the story. Samuel was dead, and Saul had expelled the mediums and spirits from the land. Samuel allowed the men. Saul now was getting rid of the mediums and spiritualists. Let's see. Gosh, I, for some reason, can't remember the Woman of Endor and what she did. And it doesn't tell me right away, so... Oh, she was the median. That's right, she was the median. That's right. And I believe Saul talked to her about what was going on with the spirit. So the next one's Bathsheba, number 22. Her name means the seventh daughter, or the daughter of oath. Bathsheba, ooh, I think this is the one, if I'm not mistaken, that King David saw was bathing, was beautiful up on a rooftop. Yes, she was a victim of the king's desire. I believe he sent her husband, she was married, and I believe he sent her husband to the front line. Yes. And he ended up dying, and so then King David married her. But remember, they lost, was it their firstborn? Because David did that evil deed. Tamar, daughter of King David. So this is, Tamar was King David's daughter. Okay. Aaron, son of David, fell in love with Tamar. He was a beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Okay, so then the wise woman of Abel. A lot of this is during the King David's time. And I don't know that one. I don't remember. Rizpah, her name means a hot stone or coal. That's 25. That's Saul's concubine. Rizpah was the mother of Amaroni and Mephibosheth. Though a woman with few rights and little power, she displayed great courage and loyalty after the death of her sons. Okay, this is where King David took both of her sons and they were killed. She went up and was basically mourning for them for quite a long time, I believe. And Saul took pity on her and actually gave the sons back to her to bury. So I remember that one. The Queen of Sheba, right? A lot of us think that was not a story, but it actually was part of the Bible. It was Jezebel. So Jezebel was a pagan queen. She prized wisdom above power. She appears to have been intellectually gifted with a good head of business and diplomacy. So she actually had something to do with the lineage of Christ, though. Believe it or not. One of Solomon's wives received, I'm trying to think. Oh, that's right. She brought gifts to the king of Solomon. I think she might have ended up marrying Solomon later on. Then we go with, oh, sorry. That was the Queen of Sheba. Then Jezebel is the next one. Where is the prince? Baal exists. A religious woman, she spread idolatry throughout Israel. Powerful, cunning, and arrogant, she actively opposed God. Even she was the one that was killing all the prophets horribly. A horrible way, but she ended up, I think it was Isaac, if I'm not mistaken, prophesied that she would die a terrible death, and she did. Like, she was thrown over the castle wall and dogs devoured her. The Widow of Zafarya. She was a foreigner facing starvation. She showed extraordinary hospitality. Okay, this was one where, remember, she had a child and she only had a little bit of bread for herself, but she ended up letting Elijah come in and live in her house and fed him, although she didn't have that much. And Elijah told her, don't be afraid, God will take care of you. And he did. He did. Okay, Shunammite woman, generous, hospitable, she was wealthy. This had to do with Elijah again. Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. It looks kind of like she's another one that okay, I'm going to skip that one. I can't get the most out of it by reading it quick. So 30 was Athaliah and Jehoshaphat. They were the daughters of Omari, one of Israel's most idolatrous and evil kings. She was the daughter of Ahab and most likely of Jezebel. Okay, so Jehoshaphat was, swear by his name, a princess and the wife of the high priest. She was a courageous woman whose actions preserved the line of Judah from which the Messiah would come. See, it's all kind of leading to the birth of Christ, is which we're almost there. So then we got Huldah. Her name means weasel. Some of these names, I don't know, you know. That's 2 Kings. She was a prophetess as well. And God used her to tell the people that he was going to bring disaster on a place. Gomer means completion. That's 32. Oh goodness. Though a married woman, she carried on numerous love affairs, crediting her lovers for the gifts her husband had given her. Okay, this one was about Hosea. I remember this. And he married, God told him actually to marry a woman that was quite promiscuous. He did marry her. She ended up leaving him for going back into prostitution and sold herself back into a pimp. He stayed faithful though, because he was told to. He goes back and buys her back and takes her back home, and I guess that's more about his faithfulness through all of that. Esther was her name divine, let's see, Star. An orphan in a foreign land, she displayed great courage in the midst of a crisis. Prior to risking her life for the people, she humbled herself by fasting and then put her considerable beauty, social grace, and wisdom in the service of God's plan. So Esther was taken to the, oh, okay, that's right. Esther was taken to the king's palace, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is where Esther ended up marrying, I believe she was Jew, and she ended up marrying the king and had favor with him and ended up saving her people, because at that time, her uncle was Mordecai. At that time, yeah, it was Jews. Someone in the castle that was very higher, the king wanted to eradicate the Jews, and because she was a Jew, she was able to save her people. Esther was. The women's of Proverbs, so it's basically the story of Proverbs, and the Proverbs 31:10 through 12 and through 30. How a woman should live her life. But remember, we found out that it was more about a man talking to his son about the kind of woman he should marry. Okay, Shulamite woman, 35, that's last week. Let's see. This is the woman, Song of Songs, I believe. Yes, Song of Songs. She is talking about, and it's Song of Solomon, 8:6-7, how in love she is with her husband. She can't wait to marry, and it's just a whole cool love story about people in love. I remember that a long time ago. I was talking to Lisa saying, man, it's been so long, I've forgotten. I don't even know what that means anymore. But I do have my memories, and they were wonderful ones. Okay, guys, we're at Elizabeth. Okay, who is Elizabeth? Her name means God is my oath. And I did look up some of this because I like finding out a little bit about it. So Elizabeth was related to Mary. She was the mother of John the Baptist, which is huge anyway, right? Okay. Now, and we're starting the New Testament. This one's Luke 1, 5 through 80. I also wanted to look up and see, I kind of like to know a little bit about the author of the books I'm reading, right? So who is Luke? So Luke, hold on, sorry, I skipped over. Luke was a physician and possibly a Gentile. So he was not one of the original 12 apostles, but may have been one of the 70 disciples appointed by Jesus. He may have accompanied St. Paul in his missionary journeys. So Paul's missionary journeys. I'm going to look down and see a little more. And he's who wrote the story of Elizabeth. That's why I'm talking about it. So who was Luke's relationship? What was Luke's relationship with Jesus? Luke depicts Jesus in his short-lived ministry as deeply compassionate, caring for the poor, the oppressed, and the marginalized of that culture, such as Samaritans, Gentiles, and women. Let's see. Well, this is a little interesting. What kind of doctor was Luke in the Bible? Physician. The New Testament mentions Luke briefly a few times, and the Pauline epistle to the Colossians refers to him as a physician, from Greek of one who heals. This is he thought to have been both a physician and a disciple of Paul. Since the early years of the faith, Christians have regarded him as a saint. Saint Luke. Okay, so the story of Luke and what he was writing about was, Luke was writing about he was introducing Christ, the story of Jesus. So in the story of Luke, there's 3 sections that Luke talks about. The first one is Jesus ministers in Galilee, the northern area of the land of Israel. The second piece that Luke talks about in the book of Luke is Jesus takes a long journey to Jerusalem, during which he welcomes people into the way of God's reign and challenges Israel's current understanding of the kingdom. The third main point in the book of Luke is Luke tells how Jesus gives his life in Jerusalem and then rises from the dead to be revealed as Israel's king and the world's true Lord. So that's the 3 stories basically in the book of Luke. So Elizabeth, let's see, Elizabeth, her name means God is my oath. She is a descendant of Aaron. Elizabeth was a woman the Bible calls upright in the sight of God. Like very few others, male or female, she is praised for observing all the Lord's commandments. That's hard to do, right? We were just talking about this at church on Sunday, it wasn't this Sunday, but a couple Sundays ago, and how hard it is to be good all the time, right? So, like very few others, male or female, she's praised for observing all the Lord's commandments and regulations without blame. She is the first to acknowledge Jesus as Lord. This is Luke 1, 5 through 80. So what happens to Elizabeth? Elizabeth becomes pregnant for 5 months and remained in seclusion. Well, she's pregnant longer, but she was in seclusion for 5 months. The Lord has done this for me, she said, because she didn't give a lot of this story, but she was actually barren, and she was older. It doesn't say how old. I don't know that She was as old as Sarah, which was 100, but she's old enough for her to say how'd this happen, because they make a point of telling us that. So the Lord has done this for me, she said. In these days he has shown his favor and taken away my disgrace among the people. Back then, if you were barren, for some reason you were disgraceful and not blessed, I think, because they believed that way. Mary got ready and hurried to a town in the hill country of Judah, where she entered Zachariah's home. It's kind of skipping. I think I'm going to go to this other part because it's kind of skipping through some of the important things. So Elizabeth in the Bible is the wife of Zachariah, mother of John the Baptist, and a relative of Mary, the mother of Jesus. A lot of us might know that from Bible stories, you know. Her story is told in Luke 1:5-80. The scriptures describe Elizabeth as a woman who is righteous in the eyes of God, careful to obey all of the Lord's commands and regulations. That's Luke 1:6. So this is a question for reflection. This is in, I just did a Google. It's called Learn Religions. As an aging woman, Elizabeth's childlessness might have been a source of shame and adversity for her in a society like Israel, where a woman's worth was closely linked to her ability to bear children. Because remember, we were just talking about Rachel and Leah, and Rachel only had 2 kids and Leah had like 13, and she was a little, well, sort of more favored, right? But Elizabeth remained faithful to God, knowing the Lord remembers those who are loyal to him. God was in control of Elizabeth's destiny as John the Baptist's mother. Are you able to trust God with the circumstances and timing of your life? That's difficult, right? I'm the worst. Like, I want things to happen really fast. I've gotten way better at waiting on God's timing, especially with, being single, a widow for 6 years. I think the longer it is, the more you get used to it. But some days you're like, it's a little bit lonely, and will it ever happen or not? And then you're okay again. So, you never know. What does God have in store? I just always say the rest of my life will be the best of my life. And that was in Proverbs. Job, remember, wow, did he go through some trials. I mean, he had sores from one end to the other. He lost his children and his wives and everything. And when he made it through it all, God said, the rest of your life will be the best of your life. And it all came back to him, plus 40 times. 40 times 40 maybe. Okay, the inability to bear a child is a common theme in the Bible in ancient times. Barrenness was considered a disgrace at that time. But time and time again, we see these women having great faith in God, and God rewards them with a child. Elizabeth was such a woman. Both she and her husband Zachariah were old. Although Elizabeth was past, so she must have been past childbearing years. I don't know, is that 45 now? 50? She conceived through the grace of God. The angel Gabriel told Zachariah the news in the temple, then made him mute. So the angel Gabriel told Zachariah in the temple, and Zachariah didn't believe him. So he was at that very moment became mute because he didn't have faith in God at that time. Just as the angel foretold, Elizabeth conceived. While she was pregnant, Mary, the expectant mother of Jesus, visited her. The baby in Elizabeth's womb leaped for joy on hearing Mary's voice. And I read this later. Oh, I think I read it. I think I read through the actual Bible verses in my Bible. And it's talking about, and Lisa and I were talking about this too, and she's like, well, what's that? Why did the baby leap? because Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit when this happened. And John was inside of her. So Elizabeth womb leaped for joy on hearing. So he heard Mary's voice, and it was all a sign of the Holy Spirit infilling. So Elizabeth gave birth to a son. They named him John. John came before Christ, remember, and did all the baptizing and everything, announcing Christ's birth. Okay, they named him John as the angel had commanded, and at that moment Zachariah's power of speech returned. He praised God for his mercy and goodness. Their son became John the Baptist, the prophet who foretold the coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. So it does tell us Elizabeth's accomplishments. Both Elizabeth and her husband Zachariah were holy people. Both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. That's hard to do, guys. For me it is. Elizabeth bore a son in her old age and raised him as God had commanded. And one of the, when I read through the Bible, some of her relatives or Zachariah's were trying to get them to name him something else after his dad, because that was how you did it in those times. But Elizabeth and Zachariah knew that they were told to name him John, and so that was his name. So what was Elizabeth's strengths? Elizabeth was sad, but never became bitter. Because of her barrenness, she had enormous faith in God her entire life. She appreciated God's mercy and kindness. She praised God for giving her a son. Elizabeth was humble, even though she played a key role in God's plan of salvation. Her focus was always on the Lord, never herself. So it says, life's lessons, we should never underestimate God's tremendous love for us, even though Elizabeth had been barren and her time for having a baby was over. That's my thing. I'm like, it was hard this year turning 60. I'm like, geez, why am I single at 60? You know what I mean? But, you know, God's got plans. So just keep the faith. Keep the faith. Okay. God caused her to conceive. Our God is a God of surprises, right? Sometimes when we least expect it, he touches us with a miracle and our life is changed forever. So keep believing. All right, that's all that I have in that one. So I'm going to get back to the actual Bible study part. Mary got ready, hurried to a town. Now remember that Elizabeth was there, and Mary knew that she had to go visit her. Hurried to a town in the hill country of Judea, where she entered Zachariah's home and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the baby leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit. In a loud voice she exclaimed, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the child you will bear." So she knew all this already, that Jesus was going to be born to Mary. But why am I so favored that the mother of my Lord should come to me? As soon as the sound of her greeting reached my ears, the baby in my womb leaped for joy. Blessed is she who has believed that what the Lord has said to her will be accomplished. So, Elizabeth's life and times. Elizabeth's husband, Zachariah, had been given a very special, very serious privilege. When it was his priestly division's turn to serve in the temple, he was chosen by lot, which was God's way of making the choice, to burn incense in the temple. I found this pretty interesting too. Each morning and evening he took fire from the altar of burnt offerings and placed it on the golden altar of incense that stood before the curtain separating the holy place from the most holy place. He then poured the dusty incense from the golden urn into the fire. While Zachariah performed this duty, all the worshippers who were at the temple that day stood outside and prayed. The smoke and aroma of the incense symbolized their prayers rising up to God. The fragrance also served to fumigate air tainted with the odor of the blood of animals killed for the sacrifices. The earliest historical records about worship included information on the burning of incense. All the nations surrounding Palestine appreciated the sweet smell of incense permeating not only their places of worship, but also their homes. The incense Zechariah burned in the temple was made according to a special recipe. That's in Exodus 30, 34 through 38, of spices and salt that had been ground to a powder. We probably know that as potpourri today, or different smelling candles, which Lisa turned me on to some really, I've got one burning here now and it's wonderful. This holy incense could be used only in the temple in worship, never for ordinarily everyday purposes. The prophet Jeremiah often condemned the Israelites for burning incense to false gods, but he could be even more scathing in his denunciation when they burned incense when their hearts were in their worship. God made it clear that the mere burning of incense didn't please him. It was only a symbol. He was looking for hearts that were turned toward him in faithfulness and trust, which reminds me of taking communion, right? We're not supposed to, if we're doing it as a symbol, we have to do it with a true heart. That's it for this study, but it does give us a few questions. I'll read a couple. What important things do these verses tell you about Elizabeth and Zachariah? Do you think the words of verse 6 mean they were perfect? If not, what do these mean? I just think that they were saying they were very faithful and true lovers of God, right? That's what I don't think they're perfect. I don't know anyone who is. Like, it's a fallen world, and there's things around us, and we make a lot of mistakes every day. Why do you think Zachariah didn't believe the angels? What do you guys think? That'd be hard to believe. It'd be hard. I don't know. Probably because his wife was beyond childbearing age, so did he know it was an angel? I mean, I don't know. Why was he punished for not believing? Well, because he didn't have faith, I would guess. Yeah, it says, imagine an angel coming to you unexpectedly and unbelievably. And that's another thing Lisa and I were talking about. These people in the Bible were not, they're the same as we are, right? They were living in harder times, persecuted, and a lot of people are nowadays, but they were normal people. That'd be hard. What would you do if an angel came to you? Maybe one has. I also hear there are angels living among us, and that's why you should always be kind to everyone. Why was Elizabeth disgraced among her people? Well, because in those days you were disgraced if you couldn't have children, that's sad, right? What about today? Infertility, infertile woman, that's hard. It's easier. I don't know. I don't want to speak for anyone, but at least you can adopt and have surrogate parents nowadays, and so maybe it makes it easier, but I don't think it's easy. So what do you think about Elizabeth's baby John the Baptist leaping inside of her? Because she was filled with the Holy Spirit, and he recognized which tells you that their perceptions are there at a young age, right? He knew it was Mary, the mother of Christ. I thought this was cool too. Elizabeth didn't just smile and offer quiet prayer when Mary arrived. She exclaimed and praised God in a loud voice. So that was a fun one, right? It's leading up to 37 is Mary, the mother of Christ. I can't even imagine. Like, I can't even imagine. I can't. Like, I don't know how she did it. Mary, the mother of Christ, or even Elizabeth, because they lived pretty hard lives, you know. That would have been difficult. Okay, so that was number 36, Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist. You know, if you guys have comments, I'd love to hear them. Let me know. I'm going to try to do this around this time, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I will only be here another week, and I think I calculated 9 days. And then we're heading to the reunion, the EM reunion, so I'm hoping to see you all there. I don't know, you know, the reunions are starting to get smaller and smaller, just like Eagle Mountain kind of got smaller and smaller. So who knows? That's why I go while I can. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing everyone, and I hope you're there. So on that, be well, my friends. Blessings to you all. Have a great week. It's Monday, starting the new week. And love you. Much love, much love. Have a good day. Bye.